Peter Woods dropped 20 pounds, changed his mindset, and now he's in the perfect scheme to dominate the ACC. Can he be the next Christian Wilkins? We'll talk about it coming up right now on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson grad, host and producer of this show, Locked On Clemson, part-time host and producer over on 105.5 FM, The Roar. I'm here every weekday to bring you daily insights and my honest takes and deep dives into Clemson football, basketball, baseball, softball, whatever, recruiting. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and we bring that energy 5 days a week. And if you're new to the show, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and also the notification bell so you never miss a moment. And don't forget to follow me in between episodes over on X at the Morgan T Show for all my bonus thoughts and breakdowns over there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Check out FanDuel. Let's start us off with Peter Woods, and he's no longer a newbie. He is kind of a veteran now going into his junior season, and he's not just a shock and awe guy that you're not used to. He's a guy that you're used to maybe almost too much because I think he's getting overlooked in a lot of ways going into the 2025 season, but not so much here as a fan of Locked On Clemson because we're not going to overlook him at all on this podcast. He's primed to become one of the most dominant defensive interior linemen in the ACC, possibly in the country, and the numbers are already there for him. You know, he's entering his junior year, 59 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and really hasn't played a ton of snaps because he's been injured and he's been bouncing around different positions, as you saw last season, where he had to fill in gaps where the team didn't recruit as well and didn't retain as well. He had to fill in those spots and wasn't in a natural position to be his best. So when you factor in how inconsistent Clemson was last season at the line of scrimmage, on the defensive side of the ball under Wes Goodwin, those stats actually, because they're still good, to me, show that he is still a very dominant player that is waiting to hit that next level, waiting to explode onto the national scene. We already know that he has been recognized in the recruiting world as one of the best players in the country. We know that he was, as a freshman, rated as one of the best players in the country. But now he's a junior, and his sophomore year was a little bit of a slump because of those things we mentioned. But I think he's ready to explode onto being one of the best teams in the country. Not only that, but being one of the best players in the country. And it all kind of goes around the big guy, the main guy for the Clemson defense this season, and that is Tom Allen. He brings pressure-heavy defenses, a defense that focuses on hitting the gaps hard and demands disruption of the line of scrimmage. We've seen that in the past with Tom Allen's defenses. 2023, Penn State, not 2024, Penn State ranked one of the best teams in the nation in tackles for loss. And Clemson's personnel has those players in it to be similar to that model. You know, he was very aggressive at Indiana as well. He's going to have a similar defense. You know, Clemson traditionally likes the 4-3 because they have the personnel. But a lot of times when they don't have the personnel or they need to match up for a pass-heavy team, they have to switch up to a 4-2-5. And when you do that, a nickel, if you will, that's not an uncommon scheme to go into. But Clemson got exposed more often than not last season because of their lack of depth and because of the poor technique and just being in the wrong spot. And having the wrong play call, and he maybe even the wrong personnel out there, as we saw later on in the season. Tom Allen, I think, is a guy who's going to come in and simulate, pressure in areas and to confuse the offense. He's going to come in like a multiple look, if you will, not going to be pigeonholed into one thing or another. Post-snap movement is going to be really big too, kind of shifting back towards that late changes. So the offense is just not ready. You're not going to come out exactly the way you're lined up, maybe when the play starts to unfold. And that type of aggressive shifting and late shifting goes back to what we're used to from a Clemson fan base. Under the previous defensive coordinator that I've promised you I won't keep talking about. But it's a defensive system that's designed to confuse offenses, open up one-on-one matchups, not just on the outside edge. But to me, these are going to get matchups for athletes like Peter Woods to attack downhill, even on the interior. He's not going to be asked to just fill up space anymore. And I think a lot of that, maybe not so much on the coaches, but a lot of that also was on the fact that he was playing a little bit from behind because he was injured and he was having to kind of fill in roles that he wasn't used to. So filling in the spot, he does great at that. Don't get me wrong. He is a brick wall in many ways. He plays low to the ground. But I think going into 2025, from what I am seeing so far, to me, I would describe it as Peter Woods is being asked to be the hunter. He is being asked to find the gaps and shoot the gaps and go after the quarterback and go after the running back or whoever's back there for a tackle for loss. That's what's going to make him so dangerous because the talent is there. The pedigree is there. The ability to make plays is there. We've seen it. Now that he has gotten healthy, the rest of the ACC and the rest of the nation is going to see this even more clearly. We hear a lot of talk about other defensive players on Clemson's defense. Peter Woods, not so much really. You hear about Sammy Brown. You hear about TJ Parker. And now we're hearing about Will Heldt, Avion Terrell. Peter Woods kind of got lost in the mix. And maybe that's a good thing because you're surrounded with so much talent. But I don't necessarily think it was that good of a thing because he's the type of guy that deserves to be on the headlines, kind of like the Christian Wilkins of the world. Now, his demeanor is a little bit more quiet, but don't let that confuse you. He's still a leader, and he's still absolutely disruptive on the defensive line. And I'm going to say that he's going to go back to a more traditional role. But from what he's telling us in the post-practice press conferences, is that you are going to see him lined up in the 3 technique and the nose and the 4-eye and some other interior packages that are actually designed for him to be in those areas and not so much what we saw last year where it was just filling in a gap because of injury, filling in a gap because of roster mismanagement or loss of players or loss of depth. Each of those alignments to me are designed for him to be at his best and not just fill a role, right? So elite, and his ability to get to the backfield and his violent motion of his hands are going to help him win inside. And he's told us, quote, it lets him move more, lets him play more in space, lets him be isolated a little more against guys who probably aren't ready to face a guy at his talent level. And I think that that's not just confidence from what the coaches are telling him. I think that he is starting to see it in motion now in practices against an offensive line that is an extremely veteran offensive line and against an offensive line coach that's not a newbie, not a fool in Matt Luke. So he is seeing success at practice, and it's not just confidence that is inflated. I think that he has been able to work with Tom Allen closely to see what he can do in the future in 2025. Now, let's also talk about some of the transition that we heard about him. At the end of the season, he was closer to 330, and he was kind of a much heavier guy in the interior line. That coupled with the injuries maybe could have slowed him down a little bit more than we were used to. And even he was used to. But we're hearing now that he is leaned up. He cut some weight and then got back up a little bit to 315. And it's more muscle mass than it is just, baby fat, if you will. So last year, not playing at the right weight, he mentioned that it kind of wore him down later on in the season. Even though he wasn't playing a ton of snaps because of injury, the ones he was out there, he wasn't really built for that as far as his body type. So now he's going to be quicker off the snap. He's going to be more fluid in transition. And I think he's going to be more built to play at a high level mixture of different schemes that Tom Allen is going to go out there and call for. So it's not just about pounds, really. It kind of all builds to me about intent about what he is trying to do. He is trying to tailor his body to get to that next level, to be an NFL ready player. He's trying to tailor his body to fit Tom Allen's scheme to be able to be the most disruptive he can be. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about the kind of leader he is becoming, how he's working with other players on the roster to build them up as well. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. FanDuel is my go-to app because it is just simple. I don't want complicated in my life. FanDuel is simple. And when I win, I don't want to wait around. I hate it when my bank waits me wait around a bunch of days. Not so much with FanDuel. You get your money, you get paid out instantly, no waiting around. So you get right back in the action and have more fun. So visit FanDuel.com, get in on the college hoops action because it's not much longer left. March and April is here. So get into FanDuel.com and get in on a college hoops action all tournament long. Clemson's defense isn't just rebuilding talent this season. They're rebuilding, an identity because you got rid of Wes Goodwin and some of the frustration that you had with him, and you moved on to Tom Allen. They've also made some positional coach changes that are probably going to start to continue to build up on one another in Chris Rump and Nick Eason. And you're bringing in Ben Boulware as well at the linebacker position coach spot. So you've got an injection of a new identity there, of a new leadership. And, I think that you're going to see the defense as a whole begin to grow and at a rapid pace, in my opinion, because Dabo Swinney, the great thing that he's done is he's really proven a lot of doubters that they don't know what they're talking about. He's mentioned that a lot of national guys have mentioned that, he's kind of stuck in his ways. He's never going to change. And we're seeing that that's actually the opposite. I mean, a guy who's stuck in his ways and never going to change and too focused on loyalty or whatever you want to knock Dabo Swinney for, he has made the replacements necessary. He's brought in the players necessary. And this is the best team, I think, up and down that Clemson could have to go into a long run in 2025. And to me, it kind of starts with that rebuilding of identity around Tom Allen. But Peter Woods as well is kind of fitting that role and kind of building more to what we're going to see in the fall here in the spring. He's quietly becoming kind of an emotional leader for the team that kind of keeps everything together, the glue, if you will. He admits that he's not the loudest guy in the room. He says that TJ Parker is more of that energy hype kind of person. Wade Woodaz also comes out and he's more of the energy hype guy. Ben Boulware is the coach, energy hype guy, and Tom Allen, energy hype guy. Peter Woods leads still, but he leads in a more unique way through consistency, through toughness, and mainly through showing up when nobody else is watching. And that's the type of leader that you need on a defense. That's the type of leader that's not just all talk, and someone that can bring you to championship mentality at its core. He's not the emotional leader for sure, but he is the standard. He's mentioned that he showed up at 4:30 a.m. to do drills and things with Jeremiah Alexander and some of the freshmen like Amari Adams. And he also said, when Jeremiah Alexander was in the transfer portal, he was one of the first guys to FaceTime him and start recruiting him. And when Amari Adams got on campus, he was one of the first guys to get over there and start mentoring him. And one of the things we don't talk about much because it happened very quick. But you remember what was happening on social media with all the other rivals that were out there, people that were really against Clemson. Peter Woods was in the forefront of discussions of not staying at Clemson University. Transfer portal rumors swirled around Peter Woods going back to Alabama, where his hometown was, where he deserved to be, where where mama and papa were calling him home, as they used to say for Dabo Swinney. That was not the case because Peter Woods was silent. It kind of made us nervous, but he was silent because he tells us now he's trying to figure out how to better himself for the next season, for 2025. He wasn't focused on the outside noise. And it kind of goes back to the leadership and the maturity that you're getting now from a Peter Woods as a junior. He chose to double down. He came out and posted, let's run it back with TJ Parker and with Wade Woodaz. And, Peter Woods chose Clemson. He didn't need to be flashy on social media or anything like that, but his mindset never left the upstate, and he's ready to build something fresh with Tom Allen and be that leader that he needs. That's a rare kind of mindset in today's age. It's all about money. It's all about making more money. It's all about taking care of yourself first, getting more playing time, winning a championship over everything else. That's not what we're seeing from Peter Woods. And that tells me everything that I need to know about what kind of leader he is and what kind of family that Clemson has on this staff and on this roster. And for Clemson fans, to me, the type of guy you have in Peter Woods is actually what matters the most. It shows that the defense still has a ton of veterans that are going to lead this team and be deeply ingrained in the university and what Dabo Swinney's standard is. And I think Tom Allen, as we've seen early on, is bringing a huge standard and continuing to build on that. What Dabo Swinney has already built, Tom Allen's just adding to and spicing it up just a little bit more. Not taking away anything from, not going backwards. Clemson is moving forward. They don't really need to rebuild a ton because we know that they're one of the most veteran teams in the country. They have one of the most highest percentage of returning players from last season. So they don't need to rebuild. They have the talent. They need tone setters. They need leaders. They need guys that are going to step up, get healthy, not only get healthy, but be at the exact physical measurements and mentality that they have to be at to have a long season. Because, the seasons are just getting longer. Peter Woods is doing that. He's cut the weight. He's gotten lean. He's coming in earlier. He's leading the guys around him. And he's doing what a leader should do and holding his teammates accountable. Even as a junior, we know that we may not have much time left with Peter Woods, really, because this is a type of guy, if he has the season that I think he's going to have, he's going to be a guy that's going to be in the national spotlight and going to be really contemplating at the end of the season whether or not he's going to run it back one more time or whether or not and do a senior season or whether or not he's going to move on to the NFL. In Tom Allen's offense or defense, he's going to have Tom Allen's going to bring toughness. He's going to bring accountability. He's going to bring a relentless effort. And Peter Woods is going to be the cornerstone for that. And he's already kind of absorbed it for sure. How do you fix a defense that gives up a crap ton of run yards and 300-plus yard games and just multiple times throughout last season and seemed to falter at the biggest games last season? Well, you do it with guys like this. And you build around Peter Woods. And maybe he comes back for one more year. But to me, Peter Woods is going to have a breakout year, and I think it's a long time coming. I think most Clemson fans would probably say. All right, I'm going to finish up the show talking about why the national media still is sleeping on Peter Woods, but here at Locked On Clemson, we are not. I'm going to give you a bold projection or prediction for 2025 right after this.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Here's what kind of frustrates me a little bit. And I got to say, a lot of props to a lot of other Clemson players that are getting mentioned in the national media. You're getting a lot of Cade Klubnik. Right now, you're getting a lot of some of these transfer guys like Will Heldt and Tristan Smith. Tyler Brown, we mentioned as well. On the defensive side of the ball, you get a lot of Sammy Brown. You get a lot of TJ Parker. And those guys deserve the hype that they're getting as well. Peter Woods gets mentioned, but not at the top of one of the best players in the nation. That's the kind of love I think he needs to get. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the numbers don't, really pop off the screen. But you got to think about this. When you just look at numbers, you're missing a huge part of the story. He played through injury. He had to switch positions a ton of times last season. And he was around a defensive coordinator who really wasn't up for the job. Let's be honest. That's why he's not doing it right now. That's why he was replaced. So now that Peter Woods is not only healthy, now that Peter Woods is got to a size and a weight that he wants to be at that makes him as agile as possible, and he's got a defensive coordinator that is a proven successful coordinator, I think that he is poised to be one of the best players in the country. And he still produced, even in limited reps, 8.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He's still a very solid player. And a lot of times we see him getting eaten up and filling in gaps because that's his role. But to me, these are signs that he's going to be a superstar in 2025. Now, a lot of analysts are going to focus on the edges and the flashy edge rushers and the sack kings. And I get it. And a lot of people are going to focus on the SEC and all those guys. And I get it. But if you watch tape and you go to these games, if you're a Clemson fan and you go to games, you see what Peter Woods does. I mean, he is so valuable as an athlete. Where do you see Peter Woods in a game? You see him on special teams? Yes, you do. Do you see him on offense? Yes, you do. Do you see him on defense? Yes, you do. I mean, those are the kind of things that kind of, to me, get overlooked. That's the story that doesn't show up on the stat line. And that's why you got to be careful with all you see on the box score, because Peter Woods does that and so much more. To me, he pops more than anybody else on Clemson's front, mainly because he doesn't get a ton of stat pumping numbers up there. He's violent. He plays low to the ground. And when he finishes plays in the backfield, even after bowling through double teams. And what is another thing that you can never say about Peter Woods? The man does not take a play off, ever. He's not going to take a play off as a freshman. He's not going to take a play off as a sophomore when he was injured. And he's not going to take a play off now as a junior when he, to me, is kind of a contract year. It's kind of an NFL year. When he's healthy, he's always focused. When he's healthy, he's going to be the best. He's locked in now. I think he's maximizing everything that you need as a defensive interior lineman for Clemson to really, how do you fix a run defense that was struggling like they were? You fix it with a guy like Peter Woods. Clemson also has finally the supporting staff and the supporting cast to kind of force honest protections that you didn't have in 2024. TJ Parker coming off an 11-sack season, he's going to draw attention over there. But unfortunately, what we saw in 2024 is that that's the only guy you really had to worry about, because you had nobody to worry about on the left-hand side, on the opposite side of TJ Parker. And I hate to say that about the guys, because there's a lot of guys that were those guys last year that are still on the team. And I'm not saying that they're not bad players. I'm not saying that they're bad players. I'm not saying that they're bad athletes. But they did not intimidate the offensive linemen or offensive coordinators or pass game coordinators enough to really scheme around anybody else other than, TJ Parker and Peter Woods. And so one of them was going to be bottled up. And it more often than not, it was Peter Woods. And then with the early injury last season on really kind of a dirty play, in my opinion, we kind of had a struggle for the rest of the season. Now, two guys that I think are going to really help out to add to TJ Parker and really Sammy Brown and Wade Woodaz and all these other guys. But you already know where I'm going with this. And it's the transfer portal guys. I mean, the fact that Dabo Swinney finally went into the portal and got guys that are going to contribute immediately in areas of need at linebacker depth and at defensive end depth is critical and huge for this team going forward. And it really, to me, a lot of people say you're worried about culture when you bring new guys in. Well, you're always worried about that because you're bringing new guys in constantly with high school recruiting. You never know if those high school guys are going to be great. culture guys, right? They could be great interviewers and really kind of, pulling a double one on you, right? And so I don't think that's the case with Will Heldt and Jeremiah Alexander. Will Heldt, 6'6", transfer from Purdue, 10 tackles for loss, a veteran presence now. He kind of showed up really quick and early, and he's young and he's feisty, and he only won one game last season with Purdue. So he wants to be on a team that has a winning mindset, a winning culture, and Clemson brings that to him. He wants to be around people who are going to develop him to the next level. And not only is Clemson going to help him, but he's going to help Clemson because it helps Peter Woods be able to, get a little bit of relief from the defensive interior. And I love how Dabo Swinney has done this because it really shows, going back to the culture thing, it shows how much he respects the guys he has on his team to say, hey, you know what, guys? And I don't know if he ever said this, but if it were me, I'd be honest with my guys in the room and I'd say, hey, we had some gaps on certain positions that were key that forced you to do much more than we really needed you to do. And you rose to the occasion, but now we're going to go get you help. Help is on the way, we used to say, right? With the Clemson offense, we used to say help is on the way. But now we get to say help is here with the Clemson defense and Will Heldt and Jeremiah Alexander. Will Heldt is going to be a guy that's going to be not only relieving a lot of pressure from Peter Woods, but TJ Parker as well. And it's going to help overall. I think it's going to be the biggest impact instantly. And you could tell me what you think as well. Am I completely wrong? But I don't think I am. Will Heldt is going to be probably one of the biggest immediate impact transfer portal players we know. And then Jeremiah Alexander could be a quiet one as well because he's a 5-star guy. But he's going to be able to bring off-ball pressure and flexibility to that front seven and rotation to that front seven that you didn't have in 2024. If Heldt and Parker draw, 30-40% of the attention, and then you have an off-ball guy like Alexander Woods or Woodaz and Brown blitzing in every now and then, or more often than not, you're going to see a boost in Peter Woods in tackles for loss. I mean, maybe even double. I'm going to go out and say maybe even double the tackles for loss that he produced last season because of just how good he is when he has people to help him around him. And this could be the season 2025 where he puts it all together, where now he's healthy, now he's focused. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Peter Woods is going to finish with 15 tackles for loss and win the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Maybe even more tackles for loss. That's not just me being a hype man here, but I think it's a legitimate opportunity for him based on what Tom Allen brings to the table with his schemes, based on his role being more clear now, not having to just fill different spots. And as we've talked about in this show, work ethic. Really, what you do now, as we say in that, fourth quarter video, when nobody else is watching, when the lights are off, what you do now, will really show come Saturday in the fall. That work ethic is what Peter Woods has. If he hits the stat line, if he gets the Defensive Player of the Year, Clemson has had a little bit of a lull. They had, during those championship seasons, they had offensive and defensive players of the year a few years in a row, if you go back and look. And they've had a couple of years off now, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So if he hits the stat line, I think he could be one of the best players in the country. He will be one of the best players in the country. And that will jump him up in the NFL draft boards as well. So you may have to say goodbye to him a little bit earlier than you'd hope. Maybe you wanted a senior year with Peter Woods. If this happens the way I think it's going to happen, the way I'm calling it, you may have to understand this could be his last season. This could be the final ride for Peter Woods. It's sad to say, but I think this could be a great ending to his college football career because I do think this will be his best season yet. And what you can say if you listen to Locked On Clemson is if he makes that ACC Defensive Player of the Year, you can say, we knew it first. We already knew. We already knew. All right. Hey, thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen today. For your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On College Basketball Podcast with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here. Actually, this is the last day of March. So, you're finishing up March and we're already in the Final Four. There's no better way to stay locked in on the tournament, on the madness, with daily insights from those guys over there. So find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, I'll see you at the top of the hill.